Hello everyone, it's Laura from Artgrad, Not Mad. Prior to the Christmas break, we had some bad news within the family, and I ended up making a painting because of it. So I wanted to show you the process of how I painted this watercolour and talk a bit about how I handle my emotions by making artwork. For this piece, there was a lot that went into it. Initially, it started with seeing the sunset on the day which we got some bad news, and so having seen it, I sent it to my husband to try and cheer him up slightly. Send him a photo of the sunset because he was away from home as well, and I just wanted to send him something to make him feel like he could see a bit of home and some bright light and send him some positive thoughts, hopefully. So I just sent him a picture of it initially, and then it got stuck in my brain, and I have this issue where pictures just get stuck in my head until I paint them, and I have to paint them. I can't leave them alone until I've emptied it from my brain. So it took me a little while to build up to painting this watercolour of the sunset. I did it eventually. It's a very therapeutic process when you're painting something that is so calm and so bright and seemingly cheerful and radiant. When you are going through more difficult periods, and I mean, the last year has been difficult for pretty much everyone, so I wouldn't I wouldn't say I'm alone in dealing with that. But for me, art is one of my ways I process my emotions. Everyone has their own coping mechanisms, and for me, I find art works, but so does running, and so does yoga, and sometimes meditation. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. But I wanted to focus on art specifically because I think it's important to remember that art is not just recreating an image or making something beautiful. Sometimes it is recreating a sensation or capturing a memory. It is a form of therapy. I think a lot of people forget that art has more merit than just being a hobby. I mean, all hobbies have other impacts, but art can do a lot more than just build up technique and skill, and can be a lot more than just a way to enjoy your time. Whenever someone passes away in my life, around me, or even in the case of my partner, when he's had family or pets pass away, I quite often turn to art. I wouldn't say every time, but most of the time I will turn to art and I will end up making something. And I think it's my way of providing myself with time and space to process whatever emotions I'm feeling, or even if it's someone who's close to me going through grief, it's a way for me to provide myself with a chance to be able to take care of them by taking care of myself. And that's very selfish in a way, but you have to get yourself in the right headspace sometimes to then be able to look after another person. It's kind of that idea of put your own oxygen mask on first. And I think for me, when my hands are moving and I'm focusing on that visual idea for the goal of that painting, it gives my brain space to think, and my brain's so much quieter and calmer, and you can just recognize things a lot easier. It's like a form of meditation. Like, people talk about getting into a flow state. It is meditative, where you can just let thoughts come and go and recognize them without necessarily having to attach any emotion to them at that point. Yes, they will have emotions attached to them. Almost everything can make you feel some way, but by seeing them from a distance and almost from an outsider perspective, a third person, it gives you a chance to see without feeling. And I think this is something about me. I only ever seem to feel big emotions. I feel everything very much, and I think I'm just a very emotionally sympathetic human. The way I'd phrase it, I guess, is I feel everything with my whole heart. I wouldn't feel an emotion by halves. I think that's part of why I can get overwhelmed very easily, and I feel a lot of things very deeply. Art's always been this therapeutic, quiet space for me where I only need to focus on one thing, and that's what I'm making. And it's this sanctuary, it's a safe space for me. I think that's why a lot of people turn to art or writing or even just DIY, things like that, during difficult times or times when they know they need to just release emotions. And I think with art, because nothing is right or wrong, okay, you can have techniques that you can study and there is theory, but at the end of the day, it's rules that are there to be broken. So nothing is wrong, and that makes it feel even safer. And by making the thing you make, it grounds you, it reconnects you to the world again. And I often find that by injecting colour and life back into your day through artwork, it helps you see the beauty in the world again. It helps you see the positive when you aren't having a positive day or a positive week or month or year in the case of 2020. And it's also a way for you to express feelings that are far too big or too painful to talk about and tell others about in words. Art is a great way of speaking without talking. I think for me, that was something I did a lot growing up. As children, you lack the emotional vocabulary. So by drawing it, scribbling it, finger painting it, whatever it is you do, it helps. It may not necessarily allow you to explain something easier, but it helps you understand yourself. That's something with conceptual art and contemporary art. Everything has an explanation and a meaning, but you don't ever have to explain your art to anyone if you don't want to. It can simply be for yourself and stand alone and speak for itself. It doesn't always need to have a story to be told alongside it. Sometimes the artwork itself is the story, and that's enough. When I'm working on an artwork, it's a bit like writing your thoughts down. You can reorganize things with what you're looking at on the paper, and then in your head it just starts to make sense and becomes clearer, more organized, and that just makes you feel less anxious anyway. This was a bit of a different video. I mean, don't know if I can really say that, considering I've made all of 3, including this one, for this channel. But this isn't what I'm going to be doing all the time, because obviously this is quite a emotional topic, and it does touch on grief and mental health and mental well-being. And I don't want to get bogged down in that every video on my channel, but I think it's important that these things are spoken about, because especially over the last year, mental well-being has been a very difficult thing for everyone. If you aren't used to finding coping mechanisms, the last year must have been really rough, and considering that we don't know what 2021 holds, I think it's only fair that these things are spoken about, and mental health should always be spoken about because so many more people are dealing with things than you ever know from just talking to them. So I felt like this was an important video to make, and I didn't expect to make it so soon, but the opportunity arose and I wanted to record this piece specifically for my partner and his family so that there is some digital document of it as well as the physical piece itself. Hopefully I'll make some more light-hearted and simpler videos than this one in future. I do plan on my next video being a review of a couple of products. This piece is called Nick Sunset, and I used my Mijello Mission Gold watercolours to paint it, and a small amount of white gouache at the end, which you'll see I hold up to the camera for you to see. I think what took the longest about this piece was actually waiting for each layer to dry. It was quite a simple piece to make in some ways, but I had to wait for each layer to dry before I could come back to it. And that's why sometimes it appears very shiny and then dries in a split second for everyone watching, whereas for me it was 20 minutes or so. And I know some people will use a hairdryer to dry off their watercolour paintings in between, but I just did it the old school way and left it alone for a while and put some music on and just danced around the room to try and inject some more happiness into my evening. Hopefully this has been interesting for you to see the process of how I made this artwork, as well as some of the mental process behind this artwork and the kind of headspace I was in whilst making it, trying to just deal with things and sift through some thoughts, figure a few things out without forcing myself to come to any conclusions. Obviously this is my way of dealing with things and everyone has their own way, so if you have something that you like to do when you feel overwhelmed or feel like you need to think through some of the emotional and difficult things going on in your life, I'd be really interested to see all the different things that people get up to and maybe don't even tell others that they do when they're feeling low or anxious or even just not feeling good. And as it's now 2021, just wanted to wish you all a happy new year and hopefully things can only get better. So now the sun has set on 2020, we can all move forward and hopefully find some better times. Thanks, and until next time, bye.